On this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, a lot of basketball to talk about this time. We are focused on the weekend that was a nice win at home against the Magic, a bit of a downer on the road against Indiana last night. And then, of course, the Grizzlies are back in action in FedEx Forum tonight against the Sacramento Kings. Vince Williams Jr. continues to impress. Others continue to be hit or miss. All that and more, plus a celebration of 3,000 YouTube subscribers on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Lock in with us.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a wonderful Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for catching us wherever you are doing so, whether it's wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube in particular. Again, shout out to everybody that helped get us past the 3,000 subscriber threshold. It wasn't even over the weekend to Michael Cole. It was on Friday that we crushed through 3,000. Wonderful stuff. We really appreciate it to Michael and myself. We've been working pretty hard on the show. You know, DeMichael got started on the show and we had 500 subscribers on YouTube. I got started, and since I've come on, you know, obviously it's a team effort with DeMichael and I, but together we've built a show that has over 3,000 subscribers, almost 2,000 subscribers since I got on board. So much good stuff coming here on Locked On Grizzlies. I'm grateful for that. I'm sure DeMichael will have a few words about that as well. But just wanted to acknowledge that from the jump. And then DeMichael, we can talk a little bit more about this. Maybe since the Grizzlies have a couple of days off coming up, we can reward our YouTube followers and subscribers with a mailbag episode from the comments coming up or something like that. So we can talk maybe more like a Tuesday or Wednesday episode of the show. We can focus on that sort of thing. But again, we are grateful and thankful to be proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Again, on YouTube, you can check us out. Apple, Spotify, all those spots. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Make us a part of your NBA and Grizzlies content consumption. Hopefully, you're an everydayer already, checking us out every time an episode drops. If not, what are you waiting for? Check it out. Smash the subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. DeMichael, as I mentioned at the jump, and again, if you want to talk about our 3,000 subscribers, by all means do so. But we have a lot of basketball to talk about on this episode, too. 2 games that the Grizzlies played over the weekend. And then obviously they have the game tonight that we'll preview towards the end of the show. Let's start with the win, right? Let's try to be positive on this Monday as folks get into the car, getting on the treadmill, whatever the case might be, checking out Locked On Grizzlies. Let's start with the good news. A really impressive win over a good Orlando Magic team. I'm going to be honest with you, DeMichael. I knew that they were big, like in terms of their size. You don't really appreciate it until you see them on the floor together. They have literally like one dude, Cole Anthony, I think it was Brevin Knight who talked about that, and I paid a little more attention after he said it. They have one guy who's like an average height NBA player for his position. Everybody else is gigantic. It was really, really good to see the Grizzlies pick up a win in that contest. Not the most efficient game from somebody like Jaren Jackson Jr., 30 points on 30 shots, but you continue to see growth from players like Santi Aldama, who finally had a good shooting performance, desperately needed it. Zaire had a phenomenal night. We'll talk more about Zaire later on in the show. But Zaire looked really good against the Magic. And it was nice for them to just pick up their 5th home win, right? At least they have 5 home wins before the calendar changes to February. Again, against a good, well, maybe not good, an average Orlando team. But the Grizzlies are not average, as everybody knows that follows Locked On Grizzlies.
Yeah, big win for the Grizzlies and big win over the weekend for us as well. As Joe alluded to earlier, shout out to everyone who helped contribute to us getting to 3K subscribers. I remember we reached 1K, we reached 2K. Remember we were celebrating the 2K, Joe? Now we get to 3K. And it's a testament to, I always tell Joe, you know, when people come up to me at the games, the Grizzlies games, and say how much they're enjoying the show, I always tell Joe about that as well. And we truly appreciate it. But switching tones to this game against the Magic, you mentioned that they're big, but my key takeaway is the Grizzlies played big in my mind, particularly you mentioned Jaren Jackson Jr. going 13 of 30, but he was forceful. Like there were a lot of moments throughout that game. Orlando just couldn't guard him. Like a lot of those misses were just the ball rolling off the rim, him getting to the spot that he wants to, get to and things like that. I thought Jaren, overall was very effective throughout that game, and he's kind of growing into that role, right? Like I think after the game, it wasn't me. Someone in the media asked him, like, how does he see himself, as the number one option? Now it might have, some people will say, well, duh, like of course he's the number one option, but you rarely hear Jaren say those things. Like you needed to hear it. Like I've said in the past, we talk about how Jaren has mismatches and things like that all the time, but you rarely hear him say, I got to demand the ball in that situation when they put that little guy on me. So him saying, like, yeah, I'm the number one option. And you mentioned the 30 shots. He even joked about it. He came up to the podium after the game, and all the players get the stat sheets after the game. He's looking down at the stat sheets, and he looks up at Zaire Williams, and he goes, "Yeah, I was jacking it today." And so he knows, and he kind of is self-conscious of it in a way, right. but he still shoots it a lot. So I don't know if it's going to stop him. Like he said it to me a couple times.
And to his credit, not to cut you off, partner, to his credit, we've been hard on him. At least I've been hard on him at times. Yeah. He launches 14 threes or something like that.
That's
right?
What we don't like.
And in this game, and this might have, I'm sorry if I'm killing your vibe here. Mm-hmm. In this game, he took 30 shots, but only 5 of them were threes. So to your point, he was getting downhill. He was getting to the rim against a team where if he was going to try to take a more perimeter-based approach, it would have at least made some sense because of the size of the Magic, but he went in the other direction.
Yeah, and it was effective early. Like he forced 2 quick fouls on Paolo Banchero early in that game, and then I think he ended up Banchero actually ended up picking up his 3rd foul late in the first quarter there, and it didn't really affect him. I think he still had a nice overall scoring game, especially in the second half where he seemed like he got hot there late 3rd, early in the 4th quarter, where the Magic kind of seemed like they were about to take control. But the Grizzlies again, Vince Williams Jr., even when he isn't knocking down, all the shots in the world, he's still, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, across the stat sheet. Luke Kennard, we mentioned, what he did. I mean, he got hot for a stretch there. And he was just shooting straight tray balls in this game. Made 5 3-pointers for the Grizzlies. And typically I say you need 1, maybe 2 guys on any given night off this bench to kind of have a good night. You don't know who it's going to be most nights. And then this night it was Zaire Williams, 7 of 10 shooting from the field. I think it was an effective game. And again, even before this last game that we're going to talk about, it led to a 3-game win streak. And then over that 3-game win streak, you saw a lot of similarities from the Grizzlies in terms of effective passing the basketball, really solid defense throughout the game, and Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of leading the way offensively in terms of his forceful and aggressiveness.
And those 3 wins weren't against cupcakes, right?
No,
again, the Raptors and the Grizzlies are in kind of similar stages right now. We talked about that. It was good to see people laughing at my Britney Spears reference in the comments. DeMichael was very upset with me. And when I said the Grizzlies weren't quite a lottery team, not quite a play-in team. And I won't do it again, I promise. You're just lucky I didn't sing it to Michael. It could have been a lot worse. The Heat aren't bad, right? The Heat are good. You have the Orlando Magic.
They've been playing but
right. The Orlando Magic are average, right? Yeah. They are a 6 to 8 top, 6, 7, 8 seed ish in the Eastern Conference. So it's not like they're beating the Spurs and the Wizards and the Pistons, right? These are wins against decent teams, and that's good to see, especially the way that they were able to get those victories. I'm glad you brought up Luke Kennard because he's always somebody that kind of gets mentioned in passing, as a potential tradable asset now. And again, anybody not named Jaren, Dez, or Ja, and to a lesser extent, Vince Williams Jr., I can hear offers on anybody, but it's just hard for me when you have someone that can go off at any given moment like Kennard as a 3-point shooter. As someone who's followed this team for over a decade, to just write that off is really hard for me personally to do. Are you a little bit more willing to do that, partner, or are you kind of with me that, I would listen on a Kennard trade, but watching him make 5 threes, I think there were 4 games in a row where he made 4 or more threes. That's such a valuable skill set, especially in the modern NBA.
it's a very valuable skill set. But at the same time, I'm definitely listening. You know,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that's fair.
And we know how the Grizzlies operate. Yeah, I don't think Luke Kennard is a player that they would potentially trade at the deadline, but he is a guy as we approach the offseason. And depending on now, it depends on what type of opportunities are presented to the Grizzlies as well. Because if you're saying you could package Kennard and maybe another player, a pick or something, and the guy that you're getting back in return is an effective shooter, maybe not, Luke Kennard's blistering 44% from 3-point range. But if you're telling me you can get a 37%, 38% career 3-point shooter that is a top tier defender and capable of scoring 17, 18 a night at least, maybe even above that. If that's the type of player we're talking about getting back, then thank you for your service, Luke Kennard. I let's just be honest. But
sure.
because here's my thing, as it pertains to Luke Kennard, I've said this 100 times. If we have a big enough sample size where we see when he goes against those very physical teams, and you ask him yourself, every time they play the Clippers, they play the Lakers, they play those teams that are gonna tug on your jersey a little bit, and they're not gonna let you just roam around freely. Those are the teams that he struggles with the most. And it's not struggling in terms of missing. It's struggling just getting shots up, period. And that's kind of where I am. When you get to the playoffs, you're going to play the Timberwolves, and Anthony Edwards going to be pulling on your jersey a little bit, and Mike Conley's going to be doing those little sneaky things that the refs can't see. And, the Clippers are going to be bumping on you, and the Lakers are going to be bumping on you. Like, you got to be able to play through that. And that's something that Luke himself has said that he wants to work on and be better at, and I haven't seen that enough. But overall, if you don't give him up for anything at the end of the day, like if you trade Luke Kennard, you better get something nice in return.
I would say Kennard is a great regular season player, to your point. Draymond Green, people make fun of Draymond Green for a lot of things. He talks about the 16-game guy. You want someone that's going to help you win 16 games in the playoffs. I'm not sure Kennard's that at this stage of his career because of the things that you alluded to. So yeah, I think that's fair. I would definitely listen. But again, it's just hard for me. I watched a lot of, 84 to 81 grit and grind Grizzlies basketball games.
Yeah.
I was like, can somebody make a 3-point shot? Please. It's just hard to ship that out. But I think you're right. I do agree with you. You listen for sure. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we will be discussing the second game of the weekend, yesterday's loss in Indiana to the Pacers. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one whip, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your car alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to United States customers. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is also brought to you by FanDuel. Yes. This is Super Bowl time for FanDuel. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate. It's going to be a massive game here in less than 2 weeks. And FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, remember, is an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some wonderful super bets. Usually the Super Bowl is around my birthday, DeMichael Cole. So I get some cake and some good times in terms of birthday action as well. And I'm a football guy in addition to basketball. It's always nice to be able to settle in and catch the big game. And you can add a little bit of a sweat to that if you'd like, thanks to FanDuel. They have so many ways for you to end the football season with a W or 2 or 3. You can not just bet who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets on players that will score touchdowns, how points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today, and you will get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. DeMichael, we are going on from the good that was the Orlando Magic game, and now we're settling into a little bit more of a frustration point for some with a tough loss against the Indiana Pacers. Now, the Pacers are 16-9 at home after this win. The Pacers, of all the teams that we've mentioned so far in this episode, you could argue, at least by record, are the best.
Yeah.
The Pacers are probably in the same realm as the Heat in reality, a level above the Orlando Magic. The Pacers just completed a trade for Pascal Siakam, obviously, and he played 35 minutes in this contest. So the Grizzlies losing this game really shouldn't be a surprise, and it was a really poor third quarter in particular that doomed the Grizzlies. But the thing that stands out to me coming out of this game, and, you know, X is an echo chamber, right? Social media is an echo chamber. You don't want to let any theme get you too hot and bothered because it's not necessarily worth it, whether it's a Spaces or a thread, whatever the case might be.
Right.
But I caused some hubbub over on X, as I have a tendency to do every once in a while. And I basically said, if you were mad at, well, I think I was logical. And, you know, maybe folks will disagree with that, and you certainly could disagree with me, partner, and that is within your rights, of course. Here's what I said. The Grizzlies were on a 3-game winning streak, which we just talked about, with at least 6 rotation or starting caliber players out. If you're mad at Taylor Jenkins about losing to the Pacers, it's you. You're the problem. And some people agreed with me, right? And some people thought that I was personally attacking them, and they got very mad at me. Even though I may have never met them before or barely know them, whatever the case might be. It was more of not to be personal, but it's your basketball perspective. Like what you expect from this group of players and what you expect from a coach. The best example I can give is Greg Popovich, who you sit down with anybody and they will talk about how this guy is one of the very best to ever do it ever. Mm-hmm. He does not have experienced NBA talent. And you know what the Spurs are? Bad at basketball. The Memphis Grizzlies currently do not have experienced NBA talent. Let's go over the players that played at least 10 minutes in this game. Jaren Jackson Jr., okay. All NBA-ish, all defender of the year, defensive player of the year, cool.
Yeah.
Santi Aldama, still on his rookie contract. David Roddy, still on his rookie contract. John Conchar, on a contract that is signed for somebody that's at the end of the rotation, not someone that starts and plays 30 minutes. Vince Williams Jr. was literally a two-way player playing 5 minutes in a game where Smart and Kennard got injured earlier in the year against the Lakers. Xavier Tillman, they opted not to pick up his team, or they picked up his team option, haven't extended him yet. He's probably a free agent. Zaire Williams, still on his rookie contract. G.G. Jackson, two-way contract player. Scottie Pippen, two-way contract player. Scottie Pippen Jr., two-way contract player that wasn't on the team 2 weeks ago. What in the hell do we expect from this man? That's what I mean by you're the problem. I'm not saying DeMichael's the problem. Maybe he agrees with me. Maybe he doesn't. They won 3 games in a row with these dudes. What else do you want this guy to do? Could he have played Jaren Jackson Jr. more? Sure. Yeah, I think you can make that argument. Should he have used a challenge at some point? Yeah, we can have that conversation. I'm not saying don't critique the man, but to act like, oh, Taylor Jenkins is such a problem. He is literally working with almost nothing and still finding ways to compete. That is a mark of a good coach in my mind, DeMichael Cole.
Yeah, it's nitpicking, and the people who say these things and try to pick out, you know, certain parts of the game. Oh, he could have had this challenge in the third quarter. Oh, he should have had this player play in longer stretches. One, you got to realize that there's a game plan that's put into play, and in the Grizzlies situation right now, you're talking about 10 guys being available, you know, maximum. You know, on most nights. I think in this game in particular, I think it was 9 because Luke Kennard was out. So you got 9 guys available, and 3 of them are two-way players. So with that being said, like you don't have many options. It's not like you can go to the bench and go get Marcus Smart or Luke Kennard or Brandon Clark off the bench. Like you're going to the bench and getting a two-way player, you know, more than likely. So that is part of it, and I'm with you. You know, I use the Greg Popovich example, you know, a lot as well. It's literally a perfect example. The guy never, for about a 15-year stretch, he won 50 games every single season. But then when he didn't have Tim Duncan, Kawhi Leonard, you know, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, David Robinson, all those guys were gone. Now you're seeing, you know, what it looks like when you don't have Hall of Fame talent. Wembanyama could be that eventually, but you get the point. So I'm with you on that. But one problem that I did have, and because when you go at Taylor Jenkins, this is my thing. This is for everyone. I always say this: if you go at Taylor Jenkins, go at him with something that's kind of steadily been a problem. Because if you're just picking out something from, Jaren should have played 39 minutes instead of 36 or 37 minutes or 32 minutes or whatever the case may be, then I feel like you're just in the moment. You gotta find a problem that has been consistently happening with him. And one of those things that I noticed in this game in particular is we've seen it a few times. We've seen Herb Jones have career nights against the Grizzlies. We've seen Derrick Jones Jr. have a career night against the Grizzlies. We've seen several other players that basically the Grizzlies treat them like they're not on the floor. And you don't see a lot of NBA teams really do that. And the Grizzlies treated Jalen Smith like he wasn't on the floor for a lot of the game, and they got burned by it. 19 points, 10 rebounds, season high for him in points, a season high three-pointers made, I think 3 of 6. I think Jaren was his primary defender for a lot of that game, but it was a small sample size. But he came into this game shooting like 49%, I think, on three-pointers. And that's kind of, he's a former first-round pick, actually was drafted a couple picks above Tyrese Halliburton. So it's kind of funny that they're on the same team. But the point is the fact that I'm so mixed on this whole defensive strategy of you let Jaren kind of sink his feet in the paint, because it's if the goal is to get him more blocks, it's not working. Like his blocks have kind of plummeted from the last couple of seasons. He's still, at over 1.5 a game, but it's nowhere near, the past couple years where he's been leading the league in blocks. So with that being said, I think that from that standpoint, and the defense is still getting great results, but there are certain games where there needs to be an adjustment to be made. When you see Jalen Smith is knocking down three-pointers, you're getting his confidence up. And that's why late in the game, he was the guy who pretty much put the dagger in the Grizzlies with the dunk to give the Pacers a 4-point lead, with I think 35 seconds to go or something like that. And, he knocked down. Those three-pointers were timely. And it's crazy because the Grizzlies were making runs, and you're like, okay, now you got to up the defensive intensity, right? And then you get back on the other side, and he's wide open, and no one's closing out on him. I'm so mixed on that defensive strategy. That's the only thing in terms of that's why I say if you want to complain about something, find something that's steadily happening. And we've seen it. There are a bunch of players that I can't even think of that might even come to mind to you, where guys, Rui Hachimura, that's a playoff example. Remember that?
Rui Hachimura was going to be mine.
Yeah, it was game 1 of that series, and the Grizzlies just said, fine, if you're going to make 6 threes, do it. And at some point, you just got to respect the fact that these guys are NBA players.
Coach Jenkins being seems okay with playing that law of averages so much that and you hear him you're in the post-game pressers more than me, obviously. He says, I'll tip they hit shots tonight. Yep. They hit shots, right? And okay, yeah, but you could do a better job adjusting to try to stop that, right? Yeah. I do think that is a fair critique. That is fair. The ebbs and flows of an 82-game season with not just our fan base, but any fan base, it's exhausting, right? Like you have to find patterns, like you said, and try to analyze it and try to decipher those issues, not just one game in particular. So I'm with you on that. I think that's more than fair. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to finish out the show talking Grizzlies Kings, who could be or may not be available for this game, a second night of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights. If Jaren Jackson Jr. suddenly appeared on the injury report, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised. Maybe DeMichael, the Grizzlies beat writer for the Commercial Appeal, disagrees with me on that. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. It is Locked On Sports Today, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Quiz. I don't know if you checked this out, a new sponsor for us here on Locked On Grizzlies. We're going to have some fun, and we're going to test your team's knowledge, to Michael Cole. We're going to test the Grizzlies' knowledge that you have in that brain. Quiz has this question, to Michael. The Grizzlies have an all-time leading scorer, of course. Who is that all-time leading scorer? Is it Mike Conley, Zach Randolph, Julius Randle, or Rudy Gay?
I'll tell you what, Julius Randle being included on there is something. But we know it's the old Mr. Consistency, you know, steady Eddie. Mike Conley is my answer. I'm locking it in, Joe.
Mike Conley's correct. And if you thought that was fun, you should give Quiz with 3 Eyes a try. It is the next generation trivia experience. It's also the world's first platform where you can earn money playing knowledge games. And for Locked On Grizzlies fans, they've created an NBA quiz game where you can test your knowledge and win real cash. Play with friends or other fans and let your knowledge shine all the way to the bank. You can play without downloading anything. Just go to app.quizwith3eyes.com and start playing today. NBA Quiz is the ultimate knowledge challenge for fans that live and breathe basketball. Go to app.quizwith3eyes.com to test your knowledge and win cash today. That's Quiz with 3 Eyes, just like a three-pointer. Play now, showcase your skills, and take home cash prizes. App.quiz.com, where fans become champions. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're finishing out talking Grizzlies Kings. Stick around. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by DeMichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal. They're in Memphis, Tennessee. He's the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. I've been covering the Grizzlies for over a decade. We are the proud co-hosts of Locked On Grizzlies, now 3,000 plus subscribers strong on YouTube. Keep subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube and be an everydayer there or wherever you listen to Locked On Grizzlies. DeMichael will get out of here on this talking Grizzlies Kings. Again, I alluded to it. You have far more information on these things than I do. For me, third game in 4 nights, it would just make sense for Jaren Jackson Jr. to pop up with a sore knee or something like that. But maybe that's not going to be the case. Obviously, they have other guys with actual ailments. How do you expect the Grizzlies to kind of approach this game against the Sacramento Kings team? Ken, we talked about a lot of squads on this show. Yeah. We talked about the Magic and the Heat and the Pacers. The Kings are probably the best of all of them. And Memphis is going into a game that, even if the team was 100% healthy, it kind of feels like a scheduled loss.
Yeah, those travel back-to-backs, those are the ones when you look at the schedule at the beginning of the season, you say, how many of those back-to-backs do we have where we go from one city to the next? We saw one earlier this season. Remember when they went from Denver and they played the Clippers? And I think that was kind of the first notable loss that they had with Ja Morant in the lineup when they played that Clippers team. And I don't think it was a back-to-back for Ja because he missed the game in Denver, but pretty much for the rest of the lineup, and he was sick that game. So, I mean, pretty much for the rest of the lineup, like it was kind of you just knew what it was going to be. And this is one of those situations where you look at the schedule back-to-back, you say, man, you're going to have to really grind this out. Of course, the Grizzlies, they travel the night, so they don't leave like the next morning or anything like that. They left Indiana right after the game, so they get home probably at a decent time because Indiana's not
right. It was an early game. Yeah, and the NBA kind of punted conference championship Sunday.
Yeah, punted literally. And so that's where you look at it and you say, okay, it's a back-to-back, and you know how that goes. But here's the thing: in terms of sitting guys and things like that, it makes sense, Joe. Like, but where it doesn't make sense is like you don't really have bodies right now. And we could see one guy, like we just saw Luke Kennard. Maybe if Luke Kennard is able to return to the lineup, maybe you do rest a Jaren Jackson Jr., for a game perhaps. But right now they just don't. I mean, we just went through this 9 guys active for this last game. So we'll find out where Luke Kennard is and what's the situation there. But if he's unable to play, you're down to 9. So if you take off someone else, that's 8 players. Like it's just, and I think 8 is the least amount of players that you can have active for an NBA game. So it's a tough situation. It's a situation that only we on Locked On Grizzlies will talk about. You won't find anyone else, no other NBA team talking about this situation. This is very much a Grizzlies situation here. So it's going to be tough. But I tell you what, and I don't know if Taylor Jenkins will do this, but if Jaren Jackson Jr. doesn't play, Joe Mullinax, start G.G. Jackson.
Ooh, I support that completely.
Because I feel like he's going to throw David Roddy in that lineup.
Yeah,
it'll be Luke Kennard and David Roddy. And G.G. looked – we talked about that last game. We didn't really mention him. He looked good in that last game. He's he's gaining that confidence. You can tell.
Yeah, and he's 19 years old. So, again, we talk about inconsistency. he didn't play as well against the Magic, and then he
Yep.
looked pretty solid against the Pacers. I'll do you one better, DeMichael, because if you take out Jaren, assuming Luke is healthy,
Yeah.
Luke replaces Conchar or Roddy. Luke goes in. I would just keep it exactly the same and start Aldama as your center. You don't have Xavier Tillman is your other big. So why pretend that you're something that you're not? You're going to bench Aldama, or you're not going to play Tillman, or you're not going to play Gigi, so you can have a legitimate big on the floor. Like, you might as well just lean into it, man. Get weird. Have some fun out there. Experiment and try to weird out the Kings, if that makes any sense. Like, throw stuff at them that they haven't seen.
If Aldama has to guard Domantas Sabonis, you might want to close your eyes a little bit and maybe do a little bit peeking and see what.
But if David Roddy is starting, I would put Roddy on Sabonis. Let Roddy defend that dude. I'm not saying Roddy's going to stop him, but I would like to see Roddy more than I'd like to see Aldama. To your point, I'm agreeing with you on that. Yeah. So I guess my thing is, and it goes back to our prior point about making adjustments defensively. Yeah, I think that at times, and he has done better this year with it. You've talked about it a lot, the way they're winning games differently when they do win. He is experimenting with stuff. If Jaren doesn't play, and again, this is all speculation at this time. There's no injury report. There's nothing like that. DeMichael alluded to the fact only 9 guys were healthy and active. So if Jaren can play, he's probably going to play. Yeah. But if there's any other surprise, whether it's Jaren or somebody else, allow for it to be a chance. If you say Roddy can play the 4, okay, let's see it. And it's another chance for you to accumulate data, accumulate film and tape, and say, okay, David Roddy is that versatile. He should stick around, or up Roddy, something that we thought was a valuable piece of his game, he can't do. Maybe he's somebody that we package in a future deal along with, a bigger contract, a pick or two, whatever the case might be. So I think there's a window there for them to get a little bit creative, maybe is the better way to put it than weird. We'll see if they take it against the Kings. It's going to be interesting to watch play out. When we are next time together here on Locked On Grizzlies, we'll be talking Grizzlies Kings. We'll be looking ahead to a couple of days off for the Grizzlies. I think I mentioned earlier in the show to Michael, maybe that Wednesday edition of the podcast will be a good time for us to look into doing a mailbag sort of thing, because the Grizzlies don't play again until Thursday, I believe. So maybe a YouTube specific in the comments. If folks have questions for us, things they want to see us talk about that we haven't talked about much, that could be a good way to kind of address these next couple of days to reward everybody that's helped us grow the show so nicely. Yeah, I agree. And I'm all on board with it. Yeah, let's make it happen. I think we got a lot of things to talk about over the next couple of days. Just me and Joe, we're going to really dig into some content here leading up to the trade deadline. Got to, because a major decision's coming up in the next week or so, right? They're going to have to figure out how they're going to want to approach a pretty seismic opportunity within NBA circles. Xavier Tillman was mentioned by Mark Stein in his Substack newsletter that he does as a potential target for a trade. I'd be surprised if the Grizzlies look the same coming out of the trade deadline, but something we can discuss on the next couple of editions of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you guys so much for checking us out wherever you're checking us out. Please make sure that you're going to Locked On Sports Today, 24/7 national streaming channel on YouTube. Local experts of Locked On, like DeMichael and myself, plus national shows that cover every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Become an everydayer. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Anytime a show, an episode drops, come over and check us out. Make us a part of your NBA content consumption experience each and every day. I appreciate it. I know DeMichael appreciates it as well. Until next time, stay locked in, everybody. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Enjoy Grizzlies Kings, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Thanks.